Steve came along one day and he said, look, all these people are interested in schematics, but it takes them, 10 hours if they know what they're doing to put one together. And God knows if they can figure it out and test it. He said, why don't we make a PC board? A PC board, and it'll have a silkscreen legend on it telling them where every chip goes. And we'll just sell it for 40 bucks at the club, and people will buy the PC board. They know where to get all the parts at the local surplus stores, and they'll plug the parts in, solder it together, and it will only take them a couple hours to make. And, we sat down and thought about how many people did I think in the club were really going to buy this $40 PC board that cost us $20 to make, and would we get our money back, and we'd have to pay a guy to make the PC boards. We figured out that it might take about 50 people buying them to break even. I didn't think we'd do it. Steve said, yeah, we'll lose our money, but at least we'll have a company. And I'll tell you, that's a good enough reason to do it. If you're trying to justify it in dollar terms, it did not go. But in terms of just feeling, once in your life you had a little, on the side, company, that's sort of a neat thing that everybody really wants a part of. So we did it. Originally there were 3 of us. One guy helped out doing our first manual, and he had 10% of the company. Steve and I each had 45%. And then if there were any disputes between Steve and I, we both trusted Ron Wayne to resolve them. And he decided that once Steve started getting orders for large amounts once we started selling completely, we were going to sell blank PC boards at first for 40 bucks. Once we got orders and we're selling $500 completely built computers, he got worried because Steve was committing ourselves to all these huge orders of parts for thousands of dollars, and Steve and I didn't have anything. We barely had, minimum down payment on a car, for me, one of us, and he had money. So he knew that he was the only one that in the end, in this partnership, was going to get nailed. So he sold out his 10% for $800. Well, I was at work one day, and we were planning to, barely make back our $1,000 by the time we made 100 PC boards. And we had made the first 3 boards, and I was showing them off at work to the other engineers and glowing over it. It was the most beautiful artistic PC board I'd ever seen in the world. I look at it now, and it was really pretty cruddy. But Steve called me on the phone and said, guess what? I said, what? He said, I got an order for $50,000. Okay, and of course I was floored. He hit me with the big one. And I said, what? He said, the local computer store, there was only one in our area, they'd been buying these computer kits, assembling them in the back room with their own technicians and selling them at a higher price. And that was, basically, they wanted a computer completely assembled. Well, so basically, our computer was all on one PC board. Just had to stuff all the parts in and put it over a wave soldering machine, and it was completely done. And the user only had to connect 3 things, a keyboard, a monitor, and some transformers for power. It turns out we found out that it only cost $13 to pay a company to stuff all the parts in and wave solder it. It only cost $13. We were wondering, why are all these kits being sold? Why would you not pay the $13 and make sure everybody gets a completely assembled computer? The people that were starting this little business had no idea. They came out of the hobbyist world of heat kits, and they thought that somehow that was a big cost savings benefit. It was really a drawback. So we were going to sell the most assembled computer of its day. It did not have a case on it even. It was just a plain old PC board. I mean, it came from, my thinking and the rest of the Homebrew Computer Club thinking was pretty much along the lines of, if you had a whole bunch of wires strapped across your living room floor, running into your TV set and clipping into your phone with alligator clips all over, and it was gonna burn down your house someday, that was fine, because it was usable. That was a computer, and you could really use it. And it didn't matter at all that it had to be, you'd have some sort of looks or some sort of product value. And that was where I came from. And Steve came more from a thinking of trying to get to a product that could be sold en masse and be a part of a big market that was about to happen as a real product that you can deliver and other people can use besides just we few freaks who couldn't afford it. Okay, anyway, we had to build our first Apple I's once we got this large order. And we had to buy a lot of parts. And Steve was very persuasive and talked the local part suppliers into giving us credit based on he had a purchase order that was signed by the local store. So he said, if we pick up the parts, we'll build the computers, we'll sell them to the local store, and they called the owner to make sure, and we'll give you the money, and we'll get it to you real quick. So what we did was, we arranged everything. As soon as the PC boards came off of the assembly line, at the same company, the parts would go over, and they would start stuffing the parts in, and then they would wave solder it right there, because they did it right there, and then we'd pick them up a couple days later, take them to the garage, plug in the last integrated circuits, and Steve and I would race, and I usually won. I always won. And then, I don't know how you remember these things. But anyway, we would test them out, and we'd box up the working ones and drive them down to the local store. And we discovered that from when we get the parts to when we get the computers delivered to the store and get our check was 10 days. And we had 30 days credit on the parts. We had 30 days to pay them off, and we ran the whole cycle in 10 days. It's amazing what you can do when you got one level of management.